Hey everybody, Aaron Rift here from NoDQ.com. I am here to give my thoughts on the NXT UK Takeover Blackpool II pay-per-view. That's quite a mouthful. As well as the Impact Wrestling Hard to Kill pay-per-view, which was tonight as well. I did not see the Impact Wrestling pay-per-view, but I did catch a few highlights and clips from it, and I am going to talk about the main stories. There are two in particular from the Hard to Kill pay-per-view, and I'll go ahead and start with that since that's fresh in everybody's mind right now. Let's start off with the big news coming off of the pay-per-view. Tessa Blanchard is the new Impact Wrestling World Champion, defeating Sami Callihan in the main event of the pay-per-view. Now, up until yesterday, I was expecting this to happen. I figured it was inevitable that she would win the Impact Wrestling World title. This is something that has been building up for a good year or so now. Her and Sami Callihan have been feuding for the past year, and he has gotten the better of her. And this was finally her opportunity to come back, challenge him for the world title. And we all figured that this was probably going to happen because Impact Wrestling needs something for buzz. And having her win the title gets some headlines for Impact, something they desperately need to be relevant at this stage of the game. So I'm not surprised she won the title, but what surprised me a little bit was what happened yesterday. On Saturday, Tessa sent out a tweet about how women in wrestling should be supporting each other, and several people were not happy with this tweet. Several female wrestlers from different companies called her out. We had Sienna, who is a former Impact Wrestling star. Now she is Allison Kay in the NWA. She called out Tessa for referring to a women's wrestler by the N-word and spitting in her face. Then we had Chelsea Green, who was also formerly in Impact Wrestling, call out Tessa and call her a bully. We had several other women tweet about the situation, and one tweet created a firestorm on Twitter, and this led to a lot of doubt. Would Impact Wrestling still go with Tessa as the champion despite possible backlash for it? Now, some people are saying that there's no proof of this and Impact should just go with their plan, and if something comes out in the future, they have to adjust accordingly. Others feel like Impact perhaps should not have done this. Now, the live crowd for this pay-per-view, they were behind her. They were cheering her on. So at least as far as a live crowd reaction goes, there was no backlash. And perhaps Impact Wrestling is so under the radar now that maybe their attitude is that this will blow over and it's not going to be this major scandal. People will forget about it and Tessa will stay out of trouble, and she'll mature and whatnot. Some people are saying her age is an excuse, and others are just saying there's no proof. It's just what women are claiming. So the whole thing is a lot of drama right now. But nonetheless, regardless of what ends up happening with this, Impact went with it. She is the new world champion, the men's championship. And my thought process was always going to be that she'll be the champion, and then whenever she drops the title, if there's no more backlash, if this all fades away after a while, she would eventually end up in WWE or AEW. I mean, that was my thought process, but anything can happen now, and it'll be interesting to see what is the next step here, because she did not appear at the Impact Wrestling Media Day on Saturday, and apparently she's not talking to the media tonight, despite winning the world title, and the pay-per-view abruptly went off the air. I mean, she only celebrated for about a minute or 2 minutes, and then the pay-per-view went off the air. Very interesting situation here. what do you do with the world title now? Who's her challenger? Who is she going to face? Is she going to face Sami Callihan again? Doesn't look like she's going to be facing Brian Cage, because word out is that Brian Cage is AEW bound. And on tonight's pay-per-view, Brian Cage was scheduled to face Rob Van Dam. Well, they really did not have a match. Basically, what happened was RVD beat the crap out of him, gave him the Van Terminator, and Brian Cage was deemed unable to compete, and that led to RVD having a different match, which RVD also won, by the way. So RVD here getting this big push all of a sudden. I did see some criticism from people about RVD getting this big win, 2 wins technically, I guess, if you want to call what happened with Brian Cage a win, and then also Ken Shamrock winning his match. But overall, it seems like people were happy with the Impact pay-per-view. We saw some crazy moments during this show. Willie Mack did this Super Canadian Destroyer, which was really cool. But then in the main event, Tessa Blanchard does a Canadian Destroyer. So it's like, again, same thing with AEW. Like, these moves are really being overdone, especially the Canadian Destroyer. And I believe we saw one on the NXT TakeOver pay-per-view as well. So let's go ahead and talk about the NXT TakeOver pay-per-view. Another great show from the NXT brand. I mean, NXT always delivers. I don't think that this one was as strong as the other NXT UK pay-per-views, but still, really good show. The opening match, I thought was fine. I didn't think it was anything special, but we did have a cool moment. It was Trent Seven versus Eddie Dennis. And Dennis did this Razor's Edge where he sent Trent all the way to the outside of the ring. Trent crashed into this worker who was standing there by the barricade. And both Trent and the guy took a pretty nasty bump there. I mean, it looked brutal. And then Dennis picked up the victory. So that was the opening match. And then we had the women's triple threat match, which I thought was a good match. Pretty solid stuff from the 3 of them. I thought all 3 of them looked very good in the match. And then we had Tyler Bate up against Jordan Devlin. And I thought this match was great. I thought that this was arguably the best match of the night. I mean, I was torn between 2 matches on this show. Tyler Bate is amazing. The guy is just such a gifted athlete. I would say he's top 5 as far as WWE goes from all the brands. He's got to be right up there as one of the most athletically gifted guys that WWE has. And he's 22 years old. That is crazy. I wish he was a little bit taller. I sound like Vince McMahon, but if this guy was only 3 or 4 inches taller, man, he'd be a top guy. He'd be made. He would be on the main roster, main eventer, and he still might be a top star when it's all said and done. Considering his age, he'll be on the main roster eventually, and he'll probably be a big star, but will he get higher than, say, the Ricochet level? That I don't know. He's a smaller guy, but man, he is just so damn good. I am impressed every time I see him. Everything he does looks so crisp. Psycho, and I think I keep pronouncing the name, Psycho Jet Black. I just like to say Psycho Jet Black. I think that sounds cool. He says Eddie Dennis is a lame, skinny version of Kevin Nash. Ouch. Savage comment of the night tonight? That was pretty brutal. But yeah, I really enjoyed this match with Tyler Bate, and I liked the sequence they did. They basically had a fist fight. I wonder if this is what we're going to be in store for this coming Monday on Raw. They went back and forth, had an exchange of punches, kind of like a boxing match. I thought it was great. And then Devlin hit this avalanche Spanish fly. Bate kicked out of that. Crowd was chanting "Fight Forever." And then Tyler hit the Tyler Driver 97. Devlin kicked out of that. And then Tyler hit this twisted corkscrew splash. Finally picked up the victory. And I forgot to mention the airplane spin, which is probably the most impressive airplane spin I've ever seen. I mean, it was like Cesaro. It was pretty much never ending, and the crowd gave him this huge standing ovation when it was over. Cindy says it was 57 seconds. I thought that was one of the highlights of the show. Maybe it was the highlight of the show. Psycho Jet Black says I was correct on his pronunciation. Why were people saying I was mispronouncing it? I don't know. And Virtue was not impressed with this show. Again, Tyler Bates great. I feel like the height might work against him. If he was 6'2" or 6'3", guy would be WWE champion. I really believe it. He's that talented. But yeah, I think if anything's going to hold him back from being top tier in WWE, it's going to be the height. But anyways, let's talk about the ladder match, which was another crazy match on NXT. I mean, these ladder matches are always very spectacular. Fatal 4-way match between 4 teams in NXT. It was hard to follow for me because I'm not familiar with all these guys other than Imperium, and I've seen all these guys from the other NXT shows, but it was a bit tough to follow just considering how much carnage there was and not really being familiar with all the guys. Let's see here. Stephen Osborne with a $2 super chat says, "You're nuts. Best UK takeover yet. Better than the WWE pay-per-views." Well, I would say it's better than most WWE pay-per-views, but I thought the main event was a little disappointing, and I'll get to that here in a minute. That's the only reason that I'm going to not say this was the best UK takeover. But the ladder match was crazy. Lots of big moments. We had the tables brought out. We had a double swanton bomb from Andrews and Webster, which was crazy. So yeah, just really, really insane ladder match, and I definitely recommend checking it out. Really, you should be watching this pay-per-view. I mean, even if you don't follow NXT UK, it's just as good as the NXT takeovers, the main ones. Just great stuff. And the atmosphere, the crowd was just, they were singing to Tyler Bate, and they were just so invested in everything, which really helps the show. You know, it's a nice, small, intimate crowd. And you had Triple H up there in the balcony cheering everybody on. That was a nice touch as well. So we had the WWE UK title match, Walter versus Joe Coffey. And I thought it was a good match, but I mean, after the ladder match, like, they just couldn't follow it. It was technically really solid, but here's my problem. I just cannot buy into Walter now. He lost at Survivor Series. He was the first guy out. He was in the ring less than 3 minutes, and he got eliminated like a goof. And to me, it just takes away mentally. I can't get into his match now because I think of him losing in under 3 minutes. Like, the mystique about Walter is gone. Now, with that said, it was still a really solid match, and I love the referee bump, the drop kick that Walter gave the referee. And there's a picture, which was an awesome picture. It's up on No DQ's Twitter if you haven't seen it. So the referee got knocked down, and Coffey was on the verge of winning. He went for the pinfall, but no referee. And I saw some people were upset about this, but again, Walter already lost at Survivor Series. So it's like, doesn't even matter now if somebody is pinning Walter, even though the referee was down. We had Alexander Wolf come out, and Dragunov came out and made the save, and there was chaos. The match continued. Eventually, Walter picked up the win with his powerbomb and sleeper submission. We had the credits. Imperium was there celebrating. And 1 second here. Let me get to the rest of these comments here in just a minute. Let me finish the NXT UK pay-per-view. So, Undisputed Era was celebrating. That's when all of a sudden the credits were up, and out of nowhere comes the Undisputed Era. They jump the ring. Crowd is going absolutely crazy for this. I mean, this was a massive pop. Like, this was the biggest pop I've seen on a WWE broadcast in quite some time. Crowd was just going nuts like it was the Attitude Era. The Undisputed Era came out. They beat up Imperium. The four of them destroyed Walter. Cole hit him with the last shot. This was to set up the upcoming Worlds Collide pay-per-view. Great way to end the pay-per-view. 2.5 hours. I highly recommend checking out the show. I mean, it was a great show, but I do think it was maybe the weakest. But that's, it was still like an A or an A minus for me. It was still an awesome show. And Keith Johnson with a $2 super chat says, "Hi Aaron, how do you feel about Brian Cage and AEW?" So yeah, the other big news, of course, coming out of Hard to Kill was Brian Cage is reportedly going to AEW. I think it's a great pickup for AEW. I think either WWE or AEW would have benefited to pick him up. And he is somebody that AEW really needs, because AEW, as Robbie Weiss would be very quick to point out, it's the land of the little people. So Brian Cage coming in. Brian Cage is going to be right up there. I think probably next to Luchasaurus, he's going to be the biggest guy in the company. So one would think that AEW is going to do something with Brian Cage. He's going to be the biggest guy they got. He's going to tower over pretty much everyone. So we'll see. Theoretically, Brian Cage should be a really big deal. And I guess because his gimmick is like the Terminator, we'll eventually get Terminator versus Terminator, Brian Cage versus Kenny Omega. And then Psycho Jet Black with a $2 super chat says, "What are your thoughts on Marty Scurll becoming the Ring of Honor booker?" I'm a little surprised he's not going to AEW. I thought that was the obvious place for him to go, considering his friendship with the Elite. However, he's got to do what's best for him. And if Ring of Honor is willing to pay him a lot of money for a limited schedule, and on top of that, let him be the booker for the company, that's a pretty sweet deal for Marty Scurll. So I don't blame him, and we'll see if the timing works in his favor or not. Sometimes as they say, timing is everything, and maybe it was the right time for him to not go to AEW. Maybe it wasn't. It's hard to say. We really don't know. Maybe he feels like there's more opportunity in Ring of Honor, or maybe he just feels like this is a financial offer he could not refuse. Just like The Godfather, they made him an offer he can't refuse. And Brando, the Gaming Championship, with a $5 super chat. Thank you very much for that, Brando. He says, "How about when everyone was on the ladder and that crazy ladder setup?" Yeah, that was pretty nuts, Brando. Now, I guess if I did have to critique it, I would say it looks a little too choreographed when everybody's taking all this time and, you got four people setting up ladders at the same time, and then four ladders are in the ring, and they're nicely setting up the ladders as bridges. Like, sometimes it feels like it's all a little bit too over choreographed. And then, of course, okay, so the end of the match, the finish, where, man, I'm forgetting his name now. Let me see if I could pull it up here. Barthel. He was up on the ladder. He got pushed off the ladder, and he fell onto like 6 or 7 guys. And it's that typical sequence where the guys on the outside, they're just standing there waiting to catch him. To me, that's a little too over the top and too choreographed. But still, the match was crazy. It was a fun spectacle to watch. And that's what you really want to see out of these ladder matches. You want to see that demolition derby with all the chaos and all the big spots, broken tables, broken ladders. I mean, that's what you like to see in the ladder matches. You like the carnage, and it delivered. So there you go. And Virtue says, "Brian Cage will get casuals to stop on TNT when they see him. He's a freak of nature." Yeah, exactly. Brian Cage looks like a star. He is a freak. Unfortunately, Impact really can't do much with him. Like, they don't know how to market stars. The only person they have really is Tessa, which is why I think that despite the story that came out this weekend and all the negative sentiments towards Tessa, like, she's their hottest act by far, and they felt like they're not gonna drop the ball here with her when she's red hot, and they're just gonna go with it and hope that this situation doesn't blow up in their faces. And I have no idea what this comment is. The Pope's New Horseman. I don't know what that is. Midnight Black React says, how do you feel about the Pope New Horseman? I'm not sure what you're talking about unless it's something from NWA that I might have missed. I did see some interview with the Pope, but I think I fast forwarded over it, to be honest with you. So yeah, I'm not actually sure what that was. So my apologies on that. So yeah, overall, pretty interesting day in wrestling between NXT UK and Tessa winning the title. Steve-O says, I knew Impact was still going to give her the title. They're the same company that let Jeff Hardy wrestle intoxicated in a main event. Controversy doesn't faze them, LOL. And Ken terminated by Google with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Ken. He says, what up, Riff? Did you see my super chat from this afternoon? It was about you. Missed my $10 super chat from the SmackDown live stream. LOL. At no DQ is the S. My apologies to you for that. I did miss it, I guess. So my apologies. If you want to leave me another comment, I will read it off, Ken. Yeah, I don't know. I try to catch them all, and I do apologize if I do miss a super chat. And you guys can help me in the chat room. If I do miss one, then let me know in the chat. Just say it. Have a couple other people say it so I can catch up. And sometimes people miss that I actually did get the super chat. But now I'm starting to sound like Larry David, so I'm going to move away from that. But anyways, guys, make sure you stay tuned to NoDQ.com regarding the fallout from Hard to Kill, as well as the NXT UK pay-per-view. And I will be back tomorrow night, of course, Monday Night Raw recap. And don't forget, this Thursday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, the first ever live No DQ review. That could be an epic video. It could be a total train wreck. I don't know how it's going to go, but it's going to be fun. So make sure you guys check it out. Thursday night, 7 o'clock live. Virtue Live. I'm a little scared, to be honest with you guys. Virtue's a little bit of a time bomb. So I don't know what he's going to say when he's live. He might go in a totally different direction that I'm not expecting. Robbie Vice, too. Robbie Vice live could be very interesting. So we'll see what happens. Virtue is vowing to be professional. Time will tell. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate your viewership and support. Thank you to everyone that super chatted. Have a great night. Have a great night, everyone, and I'll see you all next time.